Namaskar and welcome. You're watching News Night on DD India. Well, nation continues to battle COVID. Close on the heels of Prime Minister taking stock of the COVID situation across the country with chief ministers yesterday. Union Health Minister helmed the high-level GOM to further firm up vaccine drive and overall COVID apparatus across the country today. And this comes at a time when India's daily new cases continue to rise in some states. And in News Night tonight, we talk about these concerted efforts to win over COVID-19, and we also talk about the big takeaways of the virtual summit between India and Netherlands. I'm Sakal Bhatt on News Night. Here are the headlines. 24th group of ministers meet on COVID-19, reviews situation across the country. Union Health Minister says 11 states contribute to 54% of total cases and 65% of total deaths. Disproportionately higher deaths in Maharashtra and Punjab have spiked over the last fortnight. Ministers apprised of actions taken to increase production capacity of existing vaccines and potency and timeline of those undergoing clinical tests. Fight against COVID-19 continues. Total vaccination coverage exceeds 9.43 crores with over 36 lakh doses given in the last 24 hours. UP Chief Minister announces vaccination festival from 11th of April. Delhi government closes schools and colleges till further notice. Complete lockdown in Raipur. Bangladesh. Complete lockdown in Bangladesh from 14th of April. German Health Minister also backs for a complete lockdown to break the COVID-19 chain. Japanese government places state of the quasi-emergency in Tokyo to combat spike in COVID-19. And in a virtual summit between India and Netherlands, Prime Minister Modi stressed both nations share same concerns on global issues like climate change, terrorism and COVID-19 pandemic. Prime Minister emphasized on boosting strategic partnership in water management between India and the Netherlands. And big breakthrough for security forces in Kashmir Valley. In single day, 7 dreaded terrorists gunned down by forces in terror hotbeds of Pulwama and Shupian. Kashmir Zone Police confirms Ansar Ghazwat-ul-Hind chief amongst dead terrorists. In other news, Supreme Court observes protest demonstrations should not disrupt traffic and vehicular movement. Hearing a petition, Court observes demonstrations should not disturb and hamper public life. Prince Philip, husband of Queen Elizabeth II, dies at 99. Royal family makes the announcement. Prime Minister Narendra Modi condoles the passing away of Duke of Edinburgh, says he had a distinguished career in the military and was at the forefront of many community service initiatives. Army Subedar Vishnu Sarvananan qualifies for Tokyo Olympics, winning Asian Olympic Sailing Championships. 4 Indian sailors will compete at the Olympics. Well, those were the headlines, and now for the top stories in detail. When amidst a sudden spurt in COVID cases in some states, Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan chaired a very important 24th meeting of the group of ministers on COVID-19 today. It was observed that in many states, the proportion of the RT-PCR RAT is not satisfactory, while it was also observed that testing capacity in the private sector remains underutilized in many states. In fact, the government maintains that more than 3 crore vaccinations have been administered to 60 plus beneficiaries so far. Remember, India has also supported the global community through Vaccine Made 3 initiative, under which 6.45 crore doses of COVID-19 vaccines have been exported to at least 85 countries. Here's a detailed report.
A day after Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacted with chief ministers on the COVID-19 situation, Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan chaired the 24th meeting of Group of Ministers on COVID-19. He detailed the achievements of the world's largest vaccination drive. This comes after his strongly worded statement lambasting some comments by state governments about shortage of vaccines.
9 crore 43 lakh 34,262 doses have been given to people in India of the various priority groups. And in the last 24 hours itself, we have given 36,91,511 doses. This figure, in fact, in last week we one day even gave 43 lakh doses. This is probably the highest given anywhere in the whole world.
Dr. V.K. Paul, member Health Niti Aayog, said that India is following the same scientifically established goal approach regarding prioritization for COVID vaccination as per age groups. Recently, many state governments have been demanding opening up of vaccination for those below 45 years of age. Details of efforts to ramp up production of existing vaccines and details about the potency and timeline of vaccines undergoing clinical trial was also shared. 11 states together contribute to 54% of the total cases and 65% of the total deaths in the country. Disproportionately, higher deaths in Maharashtra and Punjab have further increased during the last 14 days. The sharp rise in cases in 11 states started in February. Majority of the cases being reported are in the younger population between 15 to 44 years of age, and majority of the deaths are being reported among the elderly population above 60 years. The group of ministers was also informed that in many states the proportion of RT-PCR RAT is not satisfactory, while testing capacity in the private sector is underutilized in many states.
Today we are all aware that we are witnessing a surge in COVID cases. We all know that it's because of the casual approach that has been adopted, unfortunately, by the society, and some sort of laxity everywhere in following the discipline of the COVID appropriate behavior that has probably resulted in this surge in the cases.
In an alarming trend, 20 doctors and around 6 MBBS students of AIIMS have been tested positive for COVID-19 in the last 10 days. This comes a day after it was reported that 37 doctors tested positive for coronavirus infection at Delhi Sir Ganga Ram Hospital. The 20 doctors testing positive at AIIMS includes 2 faculty members, while the rest are resident doctors. Talking of steps taken by state governments, Delhi Chief Minister in a tweet announced the closure of all schools and colleges till further information. On Thursday, daily cases in the national capital crossed the 5,000 mark. UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath held a high-level meeting at his residence to review the COVID-19 situation in the state. It was decided to convert the 300-bed Balrampur Hospital in Lucknow into a COVID hospital. Avra Medical College and T.S. Mishra Medical College in Lucknow are also being converted into COVID units. A target of 2 lakh daily tests, out of which 1 lakh will be RT-PCR tests, has been set. Rapid antigen tests at bus stations and airports will also be conducted in the state. Yogi Adityanath has called an all-party meet on 11th of April. On 12th April, a meeting will be held with all mayors and councillors. Yogi Adityanath also held a review meeting in Varanasi. He announced the vaccination festival or Tika Utsav will be held as suggested by the Prime Minister. In Chhattisgarh, the State Education Department has postponed Class 10 exams scheduled to begin on 15th of April. In Madhya Pradesh, Bhopal heads for a weekend lockdown. With Ram Navami and Ramzan coming up, religious leaders have appealed to everyone to follow COVID-19 protocols.
भगवान श्री राम के जन्मोत्सव में रामनवमी के अवसर पर अयोध्या में लाखों के लाखों लोग आते हैं और बहुत बड़ी भीड़ होती है। और इस प्रकार से जो कोरोना का प्रकोप चल रहा है उसमें इतने लोगों का एकत्र होना, यह प्रकोप कोरोना के प्रकोप को बढ़ाना है।
कि कई शहरों में नाइट कर्फ्यू शुरू हो गया है। इस वजह से तरावी में इस बात का ख्याल रखना ज़रूरी है कि ईशा की नमाज अव्वल वक्त में करके फ़ौरन ही तरावी की जमात शुरू कर दी जाए।
On a lighter note, in order to create awareness, an artist dressed up as Yamraj or Lord of Death can be seen on the streets of Moradabad, reminding one and all to wear masks, maintain social distancing and wash hands frequently. Bureau Report, DD India.
And now, in focus tonight, we're going to talk about combating COVID, an overview of the existing robust infrastructure put in place by the government to deal with the situation. Basically, how do we intensify the entire fight to beat COVID? And on the show tonight, we are joined by Professor K. Vijay Raghavan, Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India. Thank you so much, Raghavan sir, for joining us again on Newsnight tonight, and very glad to have Dr. Rajesh Malhotra, Director, Trauma Center, AIMS. I would like to start the show with Professor Raghavan, because you yourself have been part of these very critical GoMs. Like, just to quickly share some important and critical details with the viewers of national broadcaster DD News. What is the situation on ground? And most importantly, we dealt with corona at a time when we had no vaccine. Now we have vaccine, but I think we need something more to deal with the situation. The overview of how the government intends to firm up not only vaccine production, because a lot of complaints, concerns raised by certain states, but 11 states where you actually see the rise unabated. Dr. Raghavan.
Thank you very much. There are three principal factors which determine the extent of disease which we see. One is the way we behave and our confidence levels and our caution levels. That's one aspect. The other is the way the virus behaves. Is it spreading faster? Does it have more opportunity? And the third are interventions such as vaccines. These three are very important in determining the spread. At the start of the pandemic, we had only two, the way the virus behaves and the way we behave. And we behaved really well. Now we also have a vaccine. So it's a race now between the virus spread and the vaccination program. And that will be greatly helped as vaccine supplies become larger and larger for us to modify our behavior into the state which we had earlier so that viral spread is minimized.
Okay, Dr. Malhotra, majority of the cases now being reported are also in the younger population. There are demands. Why doesn't government open up the vaccination below 25, above 45, all that? Is government mulling over it?
So I'll tell you, this is an ethical question always, and a practical question too. Whether we should vaccinate the young and the restless who go around everywhere and are the super spreaders, but they don't really die from it in majority of cases, or we concentrate on the people who are elderly and are much more likely to die because of the infection. So while the people less than 45 years of age account for 52% of infections, they account for only 11% of the deaths. So when you have a triage in place, when you are dealing with a pandemic, you have to put your money where it gives you the maximum return, and the return is to cut down on serious disease and mortality. So we have to save the number of people who are going to die if they are not protected, and that's why we have to concentrate on people who are going to die if they are not protected first, then the people who will get infection, maybe even behave irresponsibly, as you saw people in America did early in the course of the pandemic. The young people went around partying and spreading the infection, but not getting affected much by themselves. So I think the plan which is in place to roll out the vaccine in a phased manner is the best way, because you can't just open it to the entire country in the one go and have people.
If you could just, Dr. Malhotra, sorry for interrupting, if you just clear the air about those cases where after administering the vaccine, people have still tested positive.
So that is a very important question, because a lot of people think that the vaccine is the magic bullet. It is a magic bullet only in as much as it will probably reduce the serious illness, hospitalization and death. Now, no vaccine is 100% effective. So remember, just taking a vaccine does not mean that there's a 100% elimination of risk of getting infected. But then, and you can also pass on the infection to the others. So that is why everybody has been emphasizing that you must follow the COVID appropriate behavior even if you are vaccinated. But the vaccination will prevent the stretching of the healthcare facilities and keep things under control.
Okay, Raghun sir, coming to you, this was also observed that some of the testing capacities in the private sector have been underutilized. That's a very interesting point. I mean, remember we started with one COVID lab at the outset of pandemic, and now we have a robust infrastructure, including the PPP model. Could you elaborate a bit on that as well? What do you mean when the government says underutilized?
You mean testing capacity?
Yes, sir.
Well, the point which is being made, and the Prime Minister made that to the chief ministers, is yesterday in his talk, is that it's critically important to test more and more so that your percentage positivity comes down. What does that mean? It means you're testing sufficiently in your population and identifying those who are asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic. These are typically younger people who, because of their not being aware that they are carriers, might infect more older or vulnerable people. So testing is very important as much as it identifies asymptomatic people and prevents them from infecting their contacts as it does identify disease in symptomatic people.
And, you know, those 11 states which contribute to 54% of the total cases, 11 states where the numbers are concentrated, Dr. Raghavan, any specific advisory to the state government? They need to do a bit more to contain the situation, especially the kind of scare that we have seen in Maharashtra and Punjab. Why do you think in these states we see numbers really shooting up?
Well, the numbers are indeed shooting up, and they're shooting up more than they did in the first wave. And as I said, there are two principal kinds of things which happen. One is the way we behave. If we are less cautious, the numbers will shoot up. The second is the way the virus behaves. And the third, relevant to this part, is our immune system. How strong is our immunity against previous infection? That is something which is also a parameter. So those are the kinds of balances which take place. The fact is that the numbers are shooting up, and are immediately what we can do at hand, what the states can do, is to make sure that people at large modify their behavior maximally and to roll out vaccination most efficiently, test, and isolate those in micro environments and micro containment zones, that is, so that it doesn't spread into multiple localities.
Okay, yes.
We have, by the way, I should stress,
go ahead, please,
tools at hand much better than what we had last year at the same time. So we can actually pay attention very carefully, both at the level of each of us as citizens and in terms of government at different levels, to make sure that we handle these micro containment zones as places where we pay focused attention so that we make sure that spread into other locations doesn't take place. So that's very much feasible.
Yes. So, Dr. Raghavan, sir, you're saying that the situation is not as bad as what we had last year this time around, and this time around we are better equipped to deal with the situation. But
is bad, but we are much better equipped, and we must use the tools at hand and not just worry about the problem and stare at it.
Okay. Yes. Very important point today. Dr. Malhotra, would you like to add to that, please? I think you have pressed your mute button, Dr. Malhotra. The mute button of your computer.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Please go ahead. Yes.
So, talking about using the tools at hand efficiently, I'll just give you one example. The vaccination center at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences is on the 8th floor with an access exclusively for the COVID vaccine people, so that they are not afraid of going to the hospital for getting vaccination. At a single center, we are giving 1,000 doses of vaccination every day. And just imagine, India has more than 50,000 sites which are commissioned for giving vaccination. So I think it's just a question of, taking care of what is stopping us from vaccinating the maximum number of people in the shortest possible time. Apart from, of course, the availability of the vaccines, I'm sure Dr. Vijay Raghavan can enlighten, but I am aware that at least a couple of newer vaccines are around the corner. At least one of them is the Sputnik V by the Dr. Reddy's lab, and I'm sure that things will improve when we have more vaccines types and more doses available for us.
Okay, Dr. Raghavan, would you like to share some insight into that? Dr. Raghavan?
We certainly
Yes.
have more vaccines in the pipeline, both which are with the regulator for decision making and others which are coming in. So you're going to see, the supply being vastly increased, and that will allow, effective use in multiple areas and broadening the base of use rather speedily. Until then, we must make sure that we use vaccines very prudently and judiciously in areas in each state as they get the vaccines where they are needed most, so that we curb spread and also alter our behavior.
Okay, I need to wrap up, but before that, 10 seconds, 10, 15 seconds to both of you. Dr. Malhotra, your message, and let me quickly ask you this question. We've seen a bit of an alarming news coming in from AIIMS where at least 20 doctors have been tested positive. Would you like to say something on record? All is well, nothing to panic? It's been taken care of?
There is nothing to panic, because the staff we have in the hospital are staying in the community. They are coming from a place where they live. So it is always going to reflect what is happening in the society, and can see the sharp spike everywhere. So it's to be expected that all strata of life are going to get affected by this spike.
Okay, yes. And Dr. Raghavan, your message to the viewers of Doordarshan. Yes.
Very quickly, if you're eligible for vaccination, get vaccinated and take care. If you're not yet eligible, your turn will come and take care. If you're a state government, make sure that you test, and isolate.
And take care. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You also take good care of yourself, Dr. Raghavan and Dr. Malhotra, for joining us on News Night. Always a pleasure to have you. And staying with the COVID-related news, now let's talk about COVID situation across the world. Amidst unabated increase in COVID infections cases across the globe, AstraZeneca vaccine seems to be in eye of a storm. Now, more countries are halting shots as some are limiting its use. Spain and Italy have halted the use of AstraZeneca, while Australia, Philippines, they have limited its use as they look out for more options or more alternatives. Meanwhile, United States continues to be the worst affected country by the COVID-19 pandemic, and Brazil is setting a daily record of 4,249 COVID-19 related deaths just recently. Here's more.
Starting near home, Bangladesh will be put under complete lockdown for a week from April 14. Lockdown will be implemented in the country, during which all government and private offices and factories remain closed in order to control the spread of the coronavirus. Now coming to Europe, Germany can also be expected to undergo nationwide lockdown. The prediction comes as German health minister said that the country needs to implement nationwide measures to break the current wave of coronavirus infections. Also in Japan, with 105 days until the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games begin, the Japanese government has placed the nation's capital in a state of quasi-emergency to combat a spike in COVID-19 cases.
Es braucht einen Lockdown.
We need a lockdown to break the current wave and to get considerably below an incidence of 100. This can then lead to more openings with the assistance of tests in the retail sector, the outdoor restaurant business and at soccer games.
Today I have decided to place Tokyo, Kyoto and Okinawa under expanded coronavirus measures. The period for Tokyo will be from April 12th to May 11th. For Kyoto and Okinawa, it will be April 12th to May 5th.
The controversy around the efficacy of AstraZeneca vaccine still surrounds the world, with many nations lurking to either approve or ban the vaccines. Growing worries that AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine causes rare blood clots could hinder immunization campaigns across the world, from London to Seoul. The UK has already recommended that people under the age of 30 should be offered alternatives, and Portugal and Netherlands in Europe will limit use of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine to people above the age of 60. However, the French government is still vying in favor of the AstraZeneca vaccine. Also, the Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi emphasized that vaccines should, for now on, only be given to the elderly, and appealed to regional governments and individuals not to flout his guidelines. In the meantime, what has come out as backdrop for the vaccine, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison announced doubling its order of the Pfizer Inc. COVID-19 vaccines, as concerns about the risk of blood clots with the AstraZeneca vaccine still looms. In the meantime, French President Emmanuel Macron visited the first French COVID-19 vaccine production site operated by Delpharm. In an interesting turn of events, Norwegian police fined Prime Minister Erna Solberg for breaking COVID-19 social distancing rules when she celebrated her birthday. The fine is for 2,000 Norwegian kroners. The two-term Prime Minister had already apologized last month for organizing an event to celebrate her 60th birthday with 13 family members at a mountain resort in late February, despite a government ban on events attended by more than 10 people. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Shifting focus to other news, Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a virtual summit with the Prime Minister of Netherlands, Mark Rutte, today. The summit comes close on the heels of Prime Minister Rutte's parliamentary election win in Netherlands, and Netherlands is home to the largest Indian diaspora in continental Europe, and there are over 200 Dutch companies present in India as well, with a similar presence of Indian businesses in Netherlands. Here's a detailed report.
In a virtual summit between India and Netherlands on Friday, PM Narendra Modi reiterated the warming of ties between India and the Netherlands. In his opening remarks, PM Modi said both nations share cordial and friendly relations, which is underpinned by shared values of democracy, rule of law and freedom. Noting that Netherlands is home to the largest Indian diaspora in continental Europe, PM Modi stressed both nations are on the same page and share the same concerns on global issues like climate change, terrorism and COVID-19 pandemic. PM emphasized on drawing up a strategic partnership in water management between India and Netherlands.
हमारे संबंध डेमोक्रेसी और रूल ऑफ लॉ जैसी शेयर्ड वैल्यूज पर आधारित है. क्लाइमेट चेंज, टेररिज्म, पैंडेमिक्स जैसी वैश्विक चुनौतियों पर हमारी अप्रोच एक समान है. इंडो पैसिफिक रेजिलिएंट सप्लाई चेन्स और ग्लोबल डिजिटल गवर्नेंस जैसे नए क्षेत्रों में भी हमारे बीच कन्वर्जेंस बन रहा है. आज हम अपनी स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप ऑन वाटर से इस सिलसिले को एक नया आयाम देंगे.
PM observed that the virtual summit would further energize the bilateral ties between the two countries. PM said fast-tracking and boosting investment opportunities will further bolster already existing economic ties.
इन्वेस्टमेंट प्रमोशन के लिए फास्ट ट्रैक मैकेनिज्म की स्थापना भी हमारे मजबूत इकोनॉमिक कोऑपरेशन को नया मोमेंटम देगी. मुझे विश्वास है कि पोस्ट कोविड काल में कई नए अवसर उत्पन्न होंगे जिनमें हमारे जैसे लाइक माइंडेड देश आपसी सहयोग बढ़ा सकते हैं.
PM Modi thanked PM Rutte for taking care of Indian diaspora during tough and challenging COVID times. PM also congratulated PM Rutte for his fourth consecutive electoral win, which was fondly acknowledged by the Prime Minister of Netherlands. Stating how 2019 saw an increase of 27% in bilateral trade volume between the two nations, PM Rutte of Netherlands talked about need to collaborate and protect global coalitions at a time when nations are under pressure.
For the European Union, like the Netherlands, India is a crucial partner, both in the region and in the world at large. Take, for example, the United Nations. The Netherlands welcomes India's commitment to COVAX as an essential partner in terms of accessing vaccines for low and middle income countries. And we applaud India for the vaccine Matri program. We also congratulate India on its 8th election as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council.
PM Modi also said that the post-pandemic world will provide new template of opportunities and convergences among India and Netherlands. Prime Minister Rutte remarks also drew admiration and appreciation for Operation Maitri for providing vaccine to the needy nations under the leadership of PM Modi. With inputs from Arun Sharma, Bureau Report for DD India.
And speaking at a virtual press briefing in New Delhi, Joint Secretary in the MEA, Sandeep Chakravarti, informed that both sides announced the setting up of a fast-tracking mechanism between the two countries.
To facilitate bilateral trade and to resolve issues of Dutch and Indian companies, both sides announced setting up of a fast-track mechanism between the two countries. The two leaders also discussed the ongoing collaboration in agriculture, urban development and space. They reiterated that commitment to successfully complete the establishment of centers of excellence sanctioned under the Indo-Dutch Joint Plan on Agriculture and demonstrated joint ambition to set up 25 more centers of excellence by the year 2025. On this occasion, they also acknowledged the finalization of the MOU between the Indian Institute of Space, Science and Technology and Delft University of Technology, Netherlands for mutual cooperation.
We're going to talk about the outcome of this virtual summit and how it's going to further bolster ties between India and Netherlands. We will be joined in a short while from now. Ambassador Baswati Mukherjee, former Indian envoy to Netherlands. We're going to talk to her in a bit. Meanwhile, let's quickly shift our focus to the other important news developments of the day. Moving on to Jammu and Kashmir, one of the biggest breakthroughs for security forces in Kashmir Valley. In two separate encounters in terror hotbeds of Shopian and Pulwama districts of South Kashmir, 7 dreaded terrorists have been neutralized by security forces. According to the Kashmir Zone Police, Ansar Ghazwatul Hind chief terrorist Imtiaz Shah is among the dead terrorists, which is seen as a big body blow to the terror cadres and outfits in Kashmir. And this is also seen as a huge success for intelligence network of Jammu Kashmir Police as well. Here's a detailed report.
Two separate encounters in terror hotbeds of Shopian and Pulwama districts of South Kashmir. 7 dreaded terrorists being killed and terrorist group Ansar Ghazwatul Hind being wiped out of Kashmir. All in all, a huge success for the intelligence network of J&K police and security forces. Both encounters happened in South Kashmir over the last 24 hours. The operations at Shopian and Tral have ended. 7 AK rifles and 2 pistols have been recovered. All the terrorists are from the same outfit. In the first encounter, 5 terrorists were killed in Shopian town after a joint team of J&K police and security forces launched a search operation on Thursday.
कल इवनिंग से शोपियन में जो ऑपरेशन शुरू हुआ था, एक एसपीसी मिला था शोपियन पुलिस को, आर्मी सीआरपी पुलिस ने कॉर्डन डाला, उसमें ऑपरेशन चला। हम लोग बहुत जितने भी एसओपी थे उसको फॉलो किए। 5 के 5 टेररिस्ट मारे गए, लोकल है, उसमें 2 एचएम का है, 1 एलईडी का है, 2 एजीएच का है।
In another encounter, 2 terrorists among terror outfit Ansar Ghazwatul Hind, including its chief Imtiaz Shah, were killed at Naubag Tral in Avantipura area of South Kashmir's Pulwama district on Friday.
7 के 7 टेररिस्ट के हाथ में AK-47 था, 2 पिस्टल एक्स्ट्रा था। इनके खिलाफ काफी केस दर्ज है। ये सिविलियन किलिंग इन्वॉल्व था। उसमें से इम्तियाज है एक जो था, जो सॉकल्ड अपने आप को एचएस का चीफ मानता था। बुरहान कोका के मरने के बाद इसको चार दिया गया था।
Meanwhile, General Officer Commanding of Srinagar-based 15 Corps Lieutenant General D.P. Pandey said that every possible support will be provided to the youth who wish to surrender and lead a normal life in the valley. But anyone who picks arms against the state will be targeted if they do not surrender. Bureau Report, DD India.
In other news, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh held bilateral talks with the Defence Minister of Kazakhstan, Lieutenant General Nurlan Yermekhayev in New Delhi on Friday. During the meeting, the two ministers exchanged views to further strengthen bilateral defence cooperation, including through training, defence exercises and capacity building. The leaders agreed that both sides must look at the possibility of defence industrial collaboration of mutual interest. The Kazakh Defence Minister is on an official visit to India from 7th to 10th of April. Earlier, the Kazakh Defence Minister was accorded the Tri-Services Guard of Honour at Vigyan Bhavan in national capital. Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh was also present on the occasion. Lieutenant General Nurlan also visited the National War Memorial in Delhi and laid a wreath and paid homage to the brave martyrs. Well, let's shift our gears and get to election-related news. West Bengal votes for Phase 4 tomorrow. All preparations are in place. Meanwhile, BJP versus Trinamool Congress battle for the remaining phases of polling still continues. Union Home Minister Amit Shah and BJP President JP Nadda, in fact, left no stone unturned to reach out to voters. And Mamata Banerjee, the Chief Minister, is also facing notices from the Election Commission for her remarks while campaigning. Here's a report.
The polling will be conducted from 7 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. The special facilities include mandatory sanitization of polling stations, thermal checking of voters at entry point either by polling staff or paramedical staff or an ASHA worker. 11 seats in South 24 Parganas, 10 in Hooghly and 9 in Havra will go to the polls in South Bengal, while voters across 9 assembly seats in Cooch Behar and 5 in Alipurduar district will also exercise their votes. About 373 candidates are in the frame. Campaigning for the 5th phase is on full swing. Home Minister Amit Shah held a door-to-door campaign on Friday in Bhabanipur of Kolkata. Bhabanipur has been represented by West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee for a very long time until she went for Nandigram to contest the polls this year. Reacting to Mamata Banerjee blocked CRPF remark, Amit Shah said the TMC's frustration over their impending defeat was evident in its leaders' outburst against the central forces.
जिस प्रकार की टिप्पणी ममता दीदी ने सुरक्षा बलों के लिए की है, मुझे आश्चर्य है कि सार्वजनिक जीवन में मेरा बहुत लंबा समय गया है, मैंने ऐसी टिप्पणी कभी नहीं देखी। ये क्या कहना चाहती है? लोगों को अराजकता की ओर ले जा रही है, चुनाव को शांतिपूर्ण ढंग से समाप्त नहीं होने देना उनका उद्देश्य है, या फिर हर बार की तरह रेगिंग से चुनाव जीतने का उद्देश्य है।
After the campaign in Bhabanipur, Amit Shah had lunch at the residence of Samrendra Prasad Biswas, a founding member of BJP in the state. Party leaders Swapan Das Gupta and Dinesh Trivedi were also present. BJP National President JP Nadda held a roadshow in Rajarhat of Gopalpur constituency. Meanwhile, EC has sent another notice to West Bengal CM Mamata Banerjee for her remarks on the CRPF personnel on 28th March and 7th of April, and she's been asked to explain her statements by April 10th. The TMC Supremo had targeted the CRPF personnel during her election campaign on the 7th of April in Cooch Behar. Incidents of political rivalry continued unabated on Thursday. The BJP has alleged that Trinamool Congress workers had attacked the convoy of party leader and Union Minister Gajendra Singh Shekhawat in Kolkata on Thursday night. Bureau Report, DD India.
Now let's go back to one of our top stories, the big takeaways of India-Netherlands virtual summit. Ambassador Baswati Mukherjee, former Indian ambassador to Netherlands, joins us on the show tonight. Yes, she's there. Good evening, ma'am. Ambassador Mukherjee, welcome to Newsnight. Well, considering Netherlands is home to the largest Indian diaspora there, and considering the considerable number of Dutch companies that we have in India, if you could just to begin with explain why is India important to Netherlands and vice versa.
Well, thank you for very much for having me on your program. The Dutch are fond of saying that Dutch footprints in India go back 400 years. We like to reiterate that 400 years, yes, but from 1947 to now, the Dutch have been with us. The Dutch ambassador was one of the 3 foreign ambassadors who were here on 15th August when we became independent, and it's been a robust and strong relationship. And the Dutch, who are extremely good on issues like climate change, water management, etc., have indeed been extremely helpful. And the virtual summit, not surprisingly, focused on some of these very important issues. And it's also important to remember that Netherlands is a founder member of the EU. We have an India-EU summit coming up.
Yes.
The Dutch have been very supportive as far as our strategic partnership with the European Union is concerned. So all in all, it's a win-win situation, today's virtual summit.
You know, there was specific focus on water management collaboration between the two countries. In fact, in the MEA briefing, there was, you know, an elaboration on that bit as well. You think if you could just share some more inputs on the water management convergences and collaborations between India and Netherlands?
Well, Netherlands is famous for its water management. They have an amazing UNESCO Water Management Institute in Netherlands. And we have turned to the Dutch from time to time for cleaning up our waterways, on which they have an excellent record, particularly for cleaning the Ganges. So I think more than that, they're also extremely good in water management, water conservation, and utilizing traditional techniques for preserving water, something that is once more becoming popular in India. For instance, the way in Jaipur, in the old days, we used to store water under the fort, etc. The manner in which we are trying to utilize our traditional techniques, this is something that the Dutch are extremely good at. And I think that one of the issues that was discussed actually was how to use better Dutch technology and Dutch help in both cleaning up our waterways and in preserving water better, given that that is one of the most crucial issues facing India in the next 50 years, where we can really use Dutch expertise. Don't forget also that the Netherlands is world famous for the manner in which they have built those dikes, kept out the water, they are below sea level. They have demonstrated more than any other country that they know how to manage water.
Yes, yes, and precisely that explains the water management apparatus being further boosted up. Also on that investment opportunities front, Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister's, in his remarks, there was a specific mention of fast-tracking that bit as well, investment opportunities to further bolster the already existing economic ties between India and Netherlands.
You're very right. There are more than 400 Dutch companies in India and vice versa. The biggest Indian companies are all present in Netherlands, particularly in Amsterdam. And post-Brexit, many companies have thought of moving to Amsterdam and other cities in Netherlands because it's environment friendly, it is investment friendly, it is pro-India, and it's English speaking. So it's the Dutch are very interested in investing in India. FDI flows are doing well. And some of the oldest Dutch companies in India are so old that a lot of Indians, I remember when I was in Netherlands, people used to think Philips is an Indian company, but it's a Dutch company. So I think that this is an issue that we really need to look into and increase Dutch investment in India and vice versa. Don't forget that Indian companies are investing heavily in the Dutch economy. And this is something that is only normal in a business partnership that is dynamic and two-way with flows on both sides of capital, business,
and precisely that could be the reason Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte also specifically mentioned about the 27% increase in the bilateral trade in 2019. On that note, ma'am, where he lauded India's Operation Maitri, it seems that it's praises and appreciation and acknowledgement coming all across the globe, and Netherlands, one more country, appreciating what India is doing under Operation Maitri initiative.
Well, for one thing, the Dutch were one of the first to appreciate Prime Minister Modi's attempt to harness solar energy, the Solar Alliance. This is something the Dutch Prime Minister had lauded from day one. Because it's close to the Dutch heart, how to use alternative sources of energy. They use wind power, they don't have so much solar, they also use solar. And we on the other hand are looking at wind power because in some parts of India we do have wind power, Maharashtra for example. But more than that, I think it is amazing the manner in which the trade and business have picked up, and given the fact that there was this pandemic in between, we are still now looking to see how this trade and business partnership can now pick up post the pandemic, once the vaccination process is really underway in both sides. The Netherlands admire the manner in which India has managed the pandemic, and India has vaccinated its population. That is another thing the Dutch speak about all the time, including in their media. They think that India has done a great job in managing the pandemic.
You know, there was a specific mention by Prime Minister Netherlands that we work together towards run-up to COP26, and also in a way, the way he spoke about India's permanent membership at the UNSC, where a solid backing seems to be coming from Netherlands as well. How critical do you think is that?
Well, that is a very good indication of support coming from a founder member of the European Union. You know that the European Union on permanent membership does not have a united policy, but if you go down the list, you would find that almost all countries of the European Union, barring a few, have confirmed their support for India's membership. And moreover, over the last 3-4 years, they have moved increasingly towards cementing their ties with India, rather than trying to strengthen their trade ties with China that used to be very strong. That is something, again, that we need to look at. Netherlands earlier used to always emphasize its trade and business partnership with China. Now, increasingly, they are looking at India as a substitute. They have supported the Indo-Pacific strategy. They have made good noises about the Quad. They have a very strong navy. So I think these are all issues also that we need to look at in the future.
You know that Indo-Pacific point also, that point was specifically mentioned by our Honorable Prime Minister, Indo-Pacific Resilience Supply Chain Convergence. Just to take this a little forward, you know, there was this thought shared by our Prime Minister during post-pandemic world, we're looking at some sort of new template for convergences with Netherlands. Could you just give us a peek into what is really expected now? And by the way, the virtual summit also reflected the kind of bonhomie between the two leaders, the kind of comfort that they share with each other. That was also pretty much visible, isn't it?
Well, they have met earlier and they have an excellent relationship. The Dutch Prime Minister is a pragmatic, down-to-earth, fairly young Prime Minister, a professional politician like our Prime Minister, and there are many issues on which they can collaborate. But what is very heartening is the increasing Dutch interest in collaborating with India and with the Quad in the Indo-Pacific, in their recognition that the Chinese militarism and aggressive moves are a danger to international peace and security. And the fact that we have been doing naval exercises with the Dutch Navy now for some time. And so these are all measures which we should look at, and we should see how we can strengthen them further so that we can build up also a strong military and defense relationship with the Dutch, because they are very strong also. Their Navy is world famous, and this is something we can look at.
Right, on that note, thank you very much, Ambassador Baswati Mukherjee, former Indian envoy to Netherlands, for sharing your insights into Indo-Dutch relationship, India-Netherlands relationship on Newsnight. Thank you, ma'am.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And now let's move on, and on Newsnight, let's get you some more news and updates what's happening across the country.
The special NIA court in Mumbai has remanded suspended Mumbai police officer Sachin Vajay to judicial custody till April 23rd. Vajay was arrested by NIA on March 13th in connection with explosives found in a car near Mukesh Ambani's residence and for the death of Mansukh Hiren. The court also allowed the CBI to access documents for preliminary inquiry headed by the agency against former Home Minister Anil Deshmukh. The Supreme Court, hearing a plea against the ongoing farmer protest on Delhi borders on Friday, said that public roads should not be blocked during the protests. The apex court was hearing a plea which sought direction to ensure that the road between Noida to Delhi is kept clear so that the passage is not affected. The top court said that there should be free flow of traffic on the roads. The apex court also issued notices to Haryana and Uttar Pradesh governments and asked for a response on why the roads have remained blocked for a long time due to the protests. Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu attended the 4th convocation ceremony of IIM Jammu on Friday. Addressing the gathering, the Vice President said that Jammu and Kashmir has been and will continue to be an integral part of India. He called upon the national institutes like IIMs to offer innovative courses and diplomas based on new market realities and demands of the 4th Industrial Revolution. Prime Minister Narendra Modi bowed to spiritual leader and social reformer Shri Shri Harichand Thakur on his Jayanti. In a tweet, Prime Minister Modi said, and I quote, "I bow to the great Shri Shri Harichand Thakur on his Jayanti. His life and ideals continue to give strength to several people. He gave immense importance to education and social empowerment. His values are reflected in the kind and compassionate nature of the Matua community." Union Education Minister Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank launched the Nano Sniffer, the world's first microsensor-based explosive trace detector developed by the Nano Sniff Technologies, an IIT Bombay-incubated startup. Speaking on the occasion, the Union Minister said that Nano Sniffer is a step towards Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision of a self-reliant India. Nano Sniffer is a 100% made in India product in terms of research, development and manufacturing.
This year for the first time in Olympics history after Vishnu Sarvananan, Ganapati Chengappa and Varun Thakkar joined Netra Kumanan in qualifying for the Tokyo Olympics. Sports Minister Kiran Rijiju has congratulated the Indian sailors after they made the cut for the showpiece event which is scheduled to take place from July 23rd. Netra is a trained dancer, singer and proficient painter as well. In more news, Britain's Prince Philip, the husband of Queen Elizabeth II, passed away today at the age of 99. The prince married Princess Elizabeth in 1947, 5 years before she became queen, and was the longest-serving royal consort in British history. In March, the Duke of Edinburgh left hospital after a month-long stay for treatment. Philip spent 65 years supporting the Queen, retiring from his public role in 2017. In his active years, he helped set a new course for the monarchy under a young Queen, championing Britain itself as well as environmental causes, science and technology. And expressing condolences to his death, Prime Minister Narendra Modi in a tweet expressed his grief and said, and I quote, "My thoughts are with the British people and the royal family on the passing away of His Excellency the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. He had a distinguished career in the military and was at the forefront of many community service initiatives. May his soul rest in peace." Unquote. U.S. climate envoy John Kerry on Thursday said that the United Nations Climate Summit to be held in Glasgow in Scotland in November is the last and best opportunity to get real and serious about combating climate change. Expressing concern, he said science shows how we are running out of time. President Joe Biden's administration is also expected to announce a new target for reducing emissions at a global climate summit on April 22nd. And talks on the terms for the US and Iran to come back into compliance with the 2015 nuclear deal are to resume next week after making sufficient progress since Tuesday's breakthrough agreement on a roadmap for both sides. The US has not been in direct talks with the Iranian delegation in Vienna this week, but is relaying messages mainly to European members of the body that oversee the deal. Iran is insisting all sanctions imposed by the US since 2016, including those classified by the US as non-nuclear related, must be lifted. The Water Youth Orchestra performed at the Mosul's Al Rabia Theatre to celebrate the restoration of the venue destroyed during the city's occupation by ISIS. The performance comes 4 years after the liberation of the war-ravaged city, and what made the moment even more special was the youth power behind the event.
The desolation after destruction, picking up the pieces, a restoration to move towards a new life. And then the music of life flowed. Performances resumed in Mosul's largest theatre on Thursday to celebrate its recent restoration 4 years after the city's liberation from the Islamic State.
This theatre is important for the city of Mosul so that artistic life, history and artistic as well as creative identity of Nineveh province returns at the present time, after the end of the most dangerous battle of our modern times.
Until recently, the Al Rabia Theatre still lay in ruins, but over the past few weeks, groups of local volunteers have worked to remove debris and dust ahead of the newly founded Watar Youth Orchestra's debut performance. The Watar Orchestra is the first orchestra to exist in years in Mosul and composed of youth from the Nineveh province's different religious groups.
I learned from this musical project to be someone who loves life and who doesn't give up when difficulties come up.
Today we are very happy, not only because we watched this artistic event, but also because I was seated with many youth who are around 20-22 years old or more, and who for the first time attend an event in a public theatre.
The Watar Orchestra now hopes to grow and perform in different parts of the country. Bureau Report, DD India.
And with that, it's time to wrap up this edition of News Night. We're going to be back tomorrow, same time. But as we wrap up, remember a polite reminder, masking is must. Mask Up India. Thanks for tuning in. Namaskar.